Hello, fellow Americans. You are on the YouTube channel Common Constitutionalism, and I am Mitch. I talk about issues in our government, the erosion of our culture, the minimizing of our way of life, and the disregard for our Constitution. Today's video, liberals suggest conservatives are fascists. In response to reading On Tyranny by Timothy Snyder, who portrays quite a predetermined point of view. Upon reading his thoughts, the first thing that struck me was his single-minded description of the United States of America's government being a democracy, which is incorrect. The United States is meant to be a true constitutional federal republic form of government, though admittedly, the left has eroded our values, morals, and Constitution, moving us in the direction of a democracy. However, as backwards as his writing is, in reality, he is correct that democracies have always fallen to tyranny. To understand this, we must be honest in the definition of democracy. Democracy is simply socialism. The true essence of democracy is majority rules. If a group of people vote to hang a person for killing someone by a vote of 11-1, they will hang him because majority rules. Now, in a constitutional federal republic, meaning law, in the same circumstance, they vote 11-1 to hang him. But here comes the police who say, no, you cannot hang him. He must go to trial and be judged by a jury of his peers. 12 jurors vote on his innocence or guilt. But he is not convicted by a majority. It must be unanimous to convict. If one juror votes not guilty, he goes free. This is a constitutional federal republic, or the law. Snyder's premise that democracies have always fallen to tyranny is true, as socialism is the bridge to communism and fascism alike. Snyder implores readers to defend institutions. Of course, this year, as Democrats are saying they intend to burn it all the F down, when they have the presidency and they gain the majority in the Senate, they will eliminate the filibuster rule. They will pack the Supreme Court. They will grant statehood to Washington, D.C. and Puerto Rico. Snyder warns against them dismantling institutions in order to avoid checks and balances of their power. Yes, I do agree that we must defend institutions. Snyder's third rule is beware of the one-party state. Snyder said, an effective multi-party system ensures that no one group will have all the power, and that the United States is already on the brink of falling into one-party oligarchy. Again, he is correct. Some of the examples I gave under defend the institutions clearly shows the Democrats' agenda is to eliminate all opposition parties. Their agenda is to become a one-party ruled government and an oligarchy. He tells the readers to be wary of paramilitaries, like secret police forces and death squads, which tyrants use for their own private ends. I also agree with this. Look at how the liberals used their militant organizations of BLM and Antifa for 6 months to create anarchy and havoc. They stood by and watched without any condemnation of rioting, looting, burning, assault, and murdering done to advance the Democrats' Marxist fascist agendas. Snyder goes on to say, to believe in truth and investigate. He says we must fact check what we read online and try to support high quality investigative journalism. The trouble here is the Democrat Party has already created state-run media. The fact check is now biased. Their collaboration with mainstream media, big tech, big business, and billionaire elitists has greatly diminished the ability to get unbiased and honest reporting and information. He points out how the Nazis and their tyrannous governments have used propaganda words to suspend the rights and freedoms of the people. I cannot agree more. The Democrat Party has not hesitated to encroach upon, if not eliminate, the people's constitutional liberties by using words like collusion, mandate, lockdown, deplorables, systemic racism, white privilege, woke, defund the police, and gun control, to name a few. Their purpose is obviously to foster division and separatism by using vitriolic speech as a tactic intended to get conservatives to give in to their bullying or get out of their way. Snyder says every American must try to be a patriot. They must remember what is really in the national interest, the preservation of democracy. Interesting how Snyder refuses to even write the words constitutional federal republic. Snyder goes on to say, patriotism can even mean self-sacrifice. He then tells citizens to be courageous as you can. Because if none of us is prepared to die for freedom, then all of us will die under tyranny. I will also agree with this premise as long as it is recognized that the openly touted Marxist fascist ideology is a direct threat to our nation's republic. Snyder's ambiguity is a telling deceit in his narrative. He said Americans must not be ignorant of the past. Many Americans simply assume that history is constant progress and democracy will never fail them. He adds that people's political choices do have the power to shape the future, and Americans must step up to defend their democracy unless they want to see it disappear. I too feel concern of the American people forgetting or misunderstanding and possibly being misled about our nation's history. When one sees how the Democrats stood by watching as BLM and Antifa destroyed our country's statues and monuments with the intent to rewrite America's history. Now, the rhetoric from the Democrats and these anarchist organizations continue their invective speech and their violently aggressive activities, which are meant to spread fear and bully the people into conforming to their Marxist fascist ideology. What is interesting to this point, in each of Snyder's arguments listed above, I countered by applying his own argument to the actions being used by the Marxist Fascist Democrat Party in the United States today. Now we have come to the point where I can argue directly to Snyder's presumption that it is the United States Rightwing or the Republican Party posing the threat of fascism in the United States. By following the words of Polish philosopher Leszek Kolakowski, and using the examples of European democracies between 1918 and 1989, it is clear that Snyder's true identity is socialism. His writings belies that truth. Snyder wrote with a ruse, not openly stating his beliefs. Instead, he hid behind America's so-called democracy and suggesting that President Trump is a fascist. Snyder's suggestion it is President Trump who is a fascist is ironic. In none of his above example accusations of Trump did he speak with fact. It was all just opinion and hyperbole. On the other hand, as listed above, one can show factually how the Democrat Party has been overtaken by Marxist fascist ideology. As I have shown in my other writings, it is a false understanding to consider constitutional federal republic governments transition from capitalism and conservatism to fascism or communism. It is interesting that in a socialist government, being to the left is more conservative and being to the right is more liberal. What that means is to be to the left or have conservative thoughts on socialism, one wants to stay the course or push further in that same direction, moving left of socialism towards fascism or communism. Now, what it means to be on the right or have liberal thoughts on socialism, one wants to move away or push in the opposite direction, moving right of socialism towards capitalism or federal republic. You can apply left and right to our capitalist federal republic to understand how they flip-flop. The misconception of the political spectrum is on the extreme left you have communism, and on the extreme right you have fascism, and in the middle you have moderates or centrists. This is false. The more accurate description, as explained in the video, The American Form of Government, it would be on the left you have 100% government or communism, socialism, fascism, tyrants, dictators, or any form of total government. While on the right you have zero government or anarchy. Then in the middle, you have the Constitution of the United States, where it would lie on the political spectrum. They could be called constitutional moderates. When one accepts the reality that communism and fascism are not opposites, they are really two sides of the same coin, then it will become obvious what both fascism and communism accomplish. They set up variants of the same political system. I have made the case before many times through the years, but I will say it again. All communist and fascist countries evolve from countries that are first socialist. Simply put, there has never been a communist or fascist regime that came out of a capitalist government. It is an absolute fact the country must first be deeply socialist, thus moving left beyond socialism into fascism. I would appreciate you all exploring, donating, subscribing, joining, and shopping on my sites. Until next time, this is Common Constitutionalism, and I am Mitch. Thank you, America.